Gerald Straw has been an isolated incident difficult to tap into for him.
If the rest of the world could intermesh and gel together like those kids do, this world would be a much nicer place in which to live. I love it here.
It was the early 1980s in the Kingsbridge section of the Bronx, a place where you could find children laughing, church bells ringing, pizza being thrown in on the same block, boarded up windows, street performers, and bar fights. Vibrant and diverse people living there said they felt Kingsbridge was in the midst of change. Hello, I'm Dana Tyler. Thank you for joining us for a look back, where we dig into the CBS 2 archives and revisit stories from some of our area's most memorable moments. Today's focus is on a community series from the 1980s called Our Block. CBS 2 reporter Vic Miles visited neighborhoods around the tri-state, getting reaction from residents on what was good, not so good, and about where they lived. All of their thoughts. They gave raw, heartfelt opinions about dealing with the hard realities they faced. So what an opportunity now for us to look at coverage from years ago, decades ago. Reporter Vic Miles started here at Channel 2 News, as we used to call it, in 1971, retired in the mid-1990s, and passed away in 2011. And among his stellar work, he leaves the legacy Our Block. So right now, let's have an in-depth look at Vic's conversations with people who lived on a block in the Kingsbridge section of the Bronx.
The South Bronx, an international symbol of urban failure. Decades of gutted dreams and generations of displaced families. One New York neighborhood that straddled a thin line for years, a few square miles that hung in the balance. Then poverty turned to chaos, and that tipped the scales. A neighborhood fell. Engulfed in flames of despair, the battle here lost. This is still the Bronx, for the most part still intact. An area just 10 minutes north of that battleground. The Central Bronx, about where Fordham Road crosses the Grand Concourse. Briggs Avenue, Our Block. Right now, Briggs Avenue holds on, maintaining a delicate balance. Our block could go either way, though. I've been here for weeks now, and the folks on Briggs Avenue know they're in a fight for survival. They know it's their turn to walk that thin line. Lots of gutsy New York people here. Let's take a look at it. What are kids like? Let me ask an expert.
What are they like? They're all sugar and spice and everything nice.
Principal Harry Teitelbaum looks over 2,300 children here at PS 46, the most crowded elementary school in the city. There are two schools on our block. One's Catholic. Together, they're living proof of a block gingerly groping its way to a new ethnic balance.
Well, it's gone from a predominantly Irish Jewish to predominantly Hispanic, black, and a mix of others.
Cheer them on as they are showing us that they have the spirit for Our Lady of Refuge School.
That's Sister Virginia, shepherding a smaller flock. 480 paying students, kindergarten through junior high. Together, these two schools work as an anchor sitting at the north end of our block, lending stability. One end of the teeter-totter that is Briggs Avenue.
Yeah, there's a lot of problems at the other end of the block. Active drug selling, holes in the wall, situations that close and open. It's a constant worry, frankly, for me, with our own children being involved in that. Our lunch hour situation sometimes has to be monitored.
These are my dresses. I saw dresses. You interested in one? Nah. Where did I get that? I found them.
Then there's the 194th Street end of our block, where a different set of values weighs heavily against the catechisms being taught at Our Lady of Refuge.
You see the scar over here. If you want, I'll show you the scar over here.
That's all right.
I'm sitting in this bar, minding my own business. One night, two guys we know walk in. They stick up the bar. Because I knew them, they almost cut my ear off. I just got back from the grand jury a month ago.
One day this guy can come out with, you know, with holy jeans on. The next day he'll come out with fresh pair of sneakers, fresh, and then, you know, your neighbor's crying, her stereo's missing.
The golden rule to one side, the street rules at the other. Sandwiched between is the fulcrum of a block delicately balanced at its center, a tightrope along which working people, new immigrants, and old-timers tread daily.
Well, I tell you, it's a change. It's really a change, yes. We had nothing but Irish people and Norwegian. And they all move and others come in. Some are nice. I can't put them all in one pot, but some of them, you know. They plant the bottles in my yard now, see?
They plant bottles?
Yeah.
What do you think of this block?
It ain't nothing. Too much problems.
What's the problem?
People, they steal and they rob and beat you up.
How come you know so much?
Because I'm out here. I'm a mother of 9 and 17 grandchildren. What do you think? I'm supposed to know. I'm not no child. I wasn't just born.
Well, I'm a native New Yorker. You know what I'm saying? So, and this is our first home that we're owning. So, you know, we were quite excited with it. And as we visit here many times, and it has a lot of potential. And isn't everybody buying homes? Old homes are fixing them up.
Few could question Ethel's motives and enthusiasm, but she's in for a fight here on Briggs Avenue. Many have just given up. Others on our block live with rituals of fear, all too familiar to millions of New Yorkers.
When we go into their homes and find out that they're afraid to go out for a container of milk, and they live amongst the memorabilia, that's their whole life. In their homes, they wake up, they go out to the store, and they scurry back in. And if they're out in the street, they're like the naked prey.
Yet our block is still hanging in there, and some fight just to get here. This conscious effort to be a part of the Briggs Avenue family is needed to keep the block alive. Meet first-grade teacher Mark Malcolm, a regular chip off our block.
And I'm from New Jersey. Now, every morning, I go over the bridge with the traffic and the motorists and the teeming throngs and vehicles. This guy won't let me in his lane. That guy won't let me in his lane. A truck is blowing smoke in my face. Take 45 minutes, the whole trip takes, but when I get here, it's worth the whole thing.
In its name I claim you for Christ our Savior by the sign of his cross. And of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit.
For sure, the battle for Briggs Avenue hasn't been lost yet. Not with newcomers arriving every day here on our block.
If the rest of the world could intermesh and gel together like those kids do, this world would be a much nicer place in which to live. I love it here.
Fantastic. So enlightening. I started at Channel 2 News in 1990, and the newsroom pride here of the Hour Block segments, it was tangible because it's fun, enlightening, and a lesson in journalism, and it's important to see these stories again. So we started in Kingsbridge, our look back here, and that's because it's for a very good reason. CBS News New York digital producer Glenn Wilburn, on your far right, he grew up in Kingsbridge. He's here along with the original WCBS TV special projects producer who worked with Vic, Jamie Stolz. Jamie became a longtime producer at CBS News 48 Hours. Thank you guys both so much for the two ends of the time spectrum, putting this right here, what we have together. Jamie, I remember working with Vic, but certainly not in the way or as long as you do. Tell us about Vic Miles.
I think you see just from that little clip you just rolled that Vic was more skilled in the street with regular people than anybody I ever worked with. He had a disarming way, a human way, a wonderful way of speaking to people that they would just open up for him.
This was your idea.
This was my idea. It was my idea to get out of the newsroom and into the street, because I was in what they call the writer's pool back then. And I was writing copy, but what I wanted to do was get out into my city. And Vic and I cooked up this idea, and it was pretty simple. It was just convincing the news director, his name was Frank Gardner. He was a wonderful man, a wonderful news director, that if we went to a neighborhood, to one block, we'd come back with a 5-part series that they could put on the air. And that's all we did. That's all we did. And in the newsroom, there was such support of this. I'm thinking envy as well, right? There from our coworkers. Envy. There was, where's Vic? Well, he's doing our block. Oh, gosh, we need him to do something else. How did you choose? We would look for a block that had different sorts of human activity on it, a church, a firehouse, a big market or something like that, and so that we knew we had different elements and a diverse kind of community. So you sort of scouted first, right? We scouted first. We'd go out and we'd look for, I'd just sort of walk around and go, yeah, okay, how about... What a gift, a gift of that time. I'm also wondering about how just the style of this, it's almost documentary in the reporting here. What was it about Vic and how he told stories, his reporting? His reporting was, it was very laid back, but in an incredibly intellectual way. You know, he just had a way of getting people to speak to him about their lives, about what mattered to them most, their economy at home, their family, the things that really moved them. And Vic would get people to talk. And it was their story. It was their not story. Vic's story. It was their story. What was different about our block was we didn't know the story when we went out in the field. Here's some photos of Vic with some of our co-workers. Fran Ham, we just saw Randall Pinkston. I mean, he was adored in this. He was adored. I got the certain, gosh, luck to work with him for a few years that we overlapped, and but there was a quiet way about him, which I think worked especially well in this series because he was approachable. He was approachable, and the correspondents at Channel 2 back then were legendary. He was part of that group. Chris Borgen, Dennis Cunningham, J.J. Gonzalez, Vic Miles. Yes. These were people who really had the pulse of the city and the newsroom. We were both very fortunate to work with both of them. I feel very lucky to have worked with them. So Glenn is here with us. This is Glenn Wilburn, and we're so glad you are here, Glenn. And the reason why is because, our block, Glenn grew up in that wider neighborhood. Okay, also, Glenn started our series, A Look Back. Glenn is a CBS News New York digital producer, all this great streaming stuff. And so, Glenn, just a look back of your own place. Is this like some sort of flashback experience?
It's pretty mind-blowing when I first saw it. I mean, I had heard about it at this time. I was in junior high school, so it was a little bit of ways from my old neighborhood, from the neighborhood. But I had heard that Vic Miles and CBS 2 was in the neighborhood, and I felt like I missed out.
You were in junior high.
I was in junior high school at the time. But there was a lot of excitement, and you could just see it was pretty palpable about the fact that I didn't know the topics, what was being discussed, but just the fact that they were here to cover the neighborhood was pretty exciting. So Mr. Teitelbaum? Mr. Teitelbaum. He was your principal. You had gone to that school a few years earlier. Yeah, it's seeing that schoolyard was it was just pretty amazing. It was some of my best athletic moments were in that schoolyard. You brought some photos as well. Tell us about what it was like there, which gives us even deeper meaning to Vic's Our Block. One thing I liked about the community was that it was very diverse, and I didn't have that in another neighborhood that I grew up in. And so seeing the changes in the neighborhood, you know, as we went on.
Let's just look at this photo right here, Glenn. I'm not seeing, I didn't see diversity there. You were the only child of color on the team.
That was Our Lady of Refuge. I mean,
that was the community more than your school.
Right, but there were some. That particular team that I was on. I was the only black kid, but there were some other. There was Latin and some other black kids on certain teams. But and as you see there, my classroom is pretty diverse.
Yes,
there's a good dichotomy of kids.
Yes,
and it was so sad as as the years went on. A lot of them started to move away, and I really didn't understand why, because I was young. All I knew was that I was losing friends, one by one, and that was kind of impactful.
It had to be.
Yeah.
And I think what's really important for us to say is, let's go back, right, Jamie, to the early 1980s. No cable television, no internet where you can see everything, streaming, no ability to go right back, no VHS, no, I don't think so, no DVR. So to the both of you, first of all, Glenn, to know Vic Miles, who was very well known and respected, can we say star, so to speak?
Must be.
What was that like, just that he was even coming there and had been there?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen him on TV. I mean, he was a weekend reporter. Obviously, like I said, there was no cable, so the local channels were our source of information. And just to know that someone like Vic Miles was in our neighborhood, and someone of color like myself, he was kind of one of the reasons why I probably got into this business, amongst others. But just to know that he was spending the time in our community, it was pretty mind-blowing at the time.
Jamie, tell us about that too, to go into a neighborhood. I mean, just knowing you were giving this neighborhood the chance, not that you went in bragging about it, but it had to be a responsibility as well as work.
That's a good point. I think you did feel like it was a responsibility. It was people were opening up to you. The whole block was opening up to you. We were there. Vic and I would be there for 2-3 weeks sometimes, and it wasn't like dashing in to get a soundbite on a breaking news story. You would come back to people's homes. They would invite you into their homes, invite you in for dinner, and you would really get to know people. And with that came a responsibility to present them with the dignity that they all deserve.
And then you come back, and it's written, the pieces are put together with the sound bites, we say. I don't know if we said that back then. And you have an editor. I mean, it's a real team effort that goes with that responsibility.
It was a team effort, and we felt like we were making little films about New York. We would try to get, there are always demands in a newsroom, but we would try to get the same editor for the whole series, so that person could be immersed in the footage and the images that we had, and really work on it for a month or so. Wow. And it was different, and it was also a time when people didn't expect the news crews to show up in their neighborhood. It was still kind of a rarity.
You mean unless something bad was happening?
Right. It was a special occasion, and I think Vic was somebody of stature, and he could embrace that.
Let's talk about the change all these years later. Just either one of you been back. Glenn, can you just give us a sense of your observations in more current time?
I think I probably walked through that neighborhood maybe 15 years ago, and obviously it's changed in a lot of ways, but in some ways it hasn't. Like, for instance, the big schoolyard that I talked about, there's now an annex building, so it's gone. So there's another building, there's more students, so it may still be the biggest school in the city in terms of population. But my old neighborhood, Bainbridge, which was the adjacent block from Briggs, and Briggs itself, it's still kind of the same, still kind of got that feel. I didn't feel like, oh man, it's really changed. I feel out of place. It felt like I never kind of left, to be honest with you, other than my house where I live.
Did you go see it?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
We'll have to do that. Well, it's still there.
It's
that's
still there.
Really cool,
that's
right?
A good thing.
That's really cool.
I actually had one question for Jamie. What was the reaction from? Did you get a lot of fan mail or feedback from?
We would get feedback from people saying, "Come to our block next."
Right. We have a story to tell. Yeah.
Exactly, because people do have stories.
Yes.
To tell.
Did you have a favorite then, Jamie?
A favorite block?
Of our block. I don't know if that's, I don't want to make it like, or a favorite story.
Oh my gosh. Well, on Briggs, on Briggs there was this family, and the mom was real sick. Oh. And I remember they had 3 little girls, and they invited us into their world, and it was great. Yeah. You know, it was great, because I don't think people were doing that kind of television yet.
No.
It's kind of a new thing.
New thing.
We felt it was.
I mean, it feels new now, right? It feels so important. And let's just make it clear, the different neighborhoods you went to, including New Jersey. It wasn't only in the boroughs.
It was the whole Channel 2 area. We were in Paterson, New Jersey. We were in Sheepshead Bay in Brooklyn. We were in Flushing, Queens. We were in Harlem for one. And it started to become a thing. Like, oh, here comes Vic Miles.
Oh, I love that. The first one was in Hell's Kitchen?
The first one was on West 43rd Street in Hell's Kitchen, when it was not the trendy neighborhood it is today. It lived up to its name, billing back then. Yeah.
Just before we leave here, Glenn, you mentioned just your, let me see here, just how you looked up and look up to Vic. And I would imagine Jamie, too, as a producer, since you knew him well. Can you just tell us what he might think, I know, of where this is in our history now, our Channel 2 history, our block?
I think he'd get such a kick out of it. He'd laugh. You know? He would just get a kick out of it, because that was the way he was. Yeah. He'd be honored, and he'd feel like he did something worthwhile, which he did.
He did. You all did.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure.
Because as we all know, we don't work alone. What people see on television or on digital is a team effort of many, many people. So Jamie Stolz, thank you.
Pleasure.
And Glenn Wilburn, CBS News New York, digital producer, and Jamie, you are a longtime producer at 48 Hours, the CBS News program on Saturday nights. What a pleasure to be with you guys and to pay tribute to the late reporter Vic Miles. We will do this again next week. We'll take a look back at our block again, featuring Bedford-Stuyvesant. Vic Miles takes us to a street in Brooklyn where a community garden was just beginning to grow, while just steps away, drugs were sold on the corner. It is a complicated landscape, but the story does not stop there. Will be in present time as well. Our community reporter Hannah Klieger will take you back to that very block in Brooklyn to see what's changed. Thank you for watching A Look Back. You can see more episodes on our website, cbsnewyork.com. I'm Dana Tyler. See you next time.
Narrow squalor, isolated